It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you all for being here. Football as metaphor and conundrum. I am a native of a small town in Oklahoma, a place most people have difficulty locating on a map. My co-author, Dr. Christopher and Stewart, and I refer to this area of the country as the Walmart Republic. It is an exceedingly conservative state with an important yet vexing history regarding race and class. And yes, a state that loves football. Oklahoma is both the point of origin and repository for the nation's two earliest and largest ethnic cleansing actions, the Dawes Indian Removal Act of 1830 and the Trail of Tears, 1831 to 1850. The territory was 7 votes shy of becoming the land that all freed Africans were to be required to live. Senate Bill number 1, the first piece of legislation in the state's history, made Oklahoma a Jim Crow state in direct disregard of President Teddy Roosevelt's request. The Tulsa Race War of 1921, the complete destruction of the wealthiest black community in the country, more than 35 blocks, was the first non-wartime bombing on U.S. soil. Even the state's nickname, Sooner, is a celebration of outlaws who staked their claims under cover of darkness the night before the land run officially began. It's also terrible grammar. To be an Oklahoma Sooners football fan, a college football lover, or a fan of the NFL presents many profound conundrums. But I have been my entire life, and will be checking scores as soon as this talk is over. The question is why? I wasn't a very good football player. Too chubby to be a running back, not fast enough to be a defensive end. But sports are where I first experienced the dissolution, or at least temporary reprieve, of racism. I squatted on the offensive line next to white dudes and the understanding we had to work together to be successful, even if nigga lurked behind their mouth guards. I watched religiously every Saturday as my OU heroes of all ethnicities made mutual respect and inclusiveness look easy on the field, even though black players had to be inside by sundown until the late 1970s. My elementary school, ironically named after Teddy Roosevelt, was among the last in town to desegregate. The vast lot of the school grounds is where the land run was reenacted annually. Zach, a full-blood Cherokee and among my earliest best friends, never participated. We also didn't watch Westerns. This patched earth was also the junior high school practice field where Zach displayed amazing speed at wide receiver. He was our high school mascot, a plainsman, our junior year of high school, riding a spotted mare pregame in war paint and headdress. I've long wondered how he felt on that horse, energizing a mostly white crowd whose ancestors aided in the decimation of his. It is an odd form of tribute. Several colleges and professional teams in a variety of sports possess Native American mascots. So at the same time, sports can bring disparate people together, if not only for a few hours. How can it not also engender a spirited, historic violence? Every time I see folks at Florida State or Atlanta Braves games engaging in the tomahawk chop, I cringe. Would a fan of the Washington Redskins be cool with the Beantown Honkies or the Cleveland Crackers? Perhaps it's just me. But that violence is also part of why I love football. We are Romans at the Colosseum, are we not? Not that we want anyone to experience injury, but that release of aggression, that acceptable rage. We live for hard hits, the smack of shoulder pads. Tell me it's not cathartic. As a boy, as nonviolent as I was and mostly remain, the football field was a place to vent the frustrations and pains of race and class. My junior high teammates and I loved playing the school from the wealthier west side of town. We generally lost, but relished in our thug school swag as we swallowed defeat. Sport is a place where a person of color could be hero or heroine. A place where I could watch a black or brown man attack a white man and not go to prison. To quote one of my former student poets, Maya Drew, when is the last time you cheered for a black man who was not in an end zone? My mentor, Pulitzer Prize winner Gwendolyn Brooks, wrote in a poem about the murderers of Emmett Till the following lines. Perhaps the boy had never guessed that the trouble with grown-ups was that under the magnificent shell of adulthood, just under, waited the baby full of tantrums. These lines deftly describe many professional athletes and most certainly a few football players. Not all, but many. Every weekend I ponder how players who are under investigation for sexual assault and rape are allowed to play, yet players who exercise their First Amendment rights are called disgraces and vilified by politicians. The entire Baylor University football program, including the athletic director, coaching staff, and the university's president, were dismissed for colluding in the concealment of a long history of rape and sexual assault against women on campus. Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, and Ben Roethlisberger, NFL quarterback giants, all have sexual assault on their jerseys. Would they be called unpatriotic? Colin Kaepernick's peaceful protest, his right to voice his opinion by silently kneeling during the national anthem, has cost him the opportunity to work. Just think about that for a moment. He's not working because of his opinion, not his ability, and he's harmed no one. Kaepernick is a better quarterback than half the starters in the NFL, and if you follow the game, you know I'm right. This is also a conundrum. The attacks on him are in truth attacks on free speech, regardless of whether or not you agree with him. Do these same people support the right of alt-right leaders to spew hate and division across the country? Are these the same people who told former Ohio State quarterback Cardell Jones, when he shared his thoughts on Twitter on police brutality, to, quote, worry about getting us fans another championship, stay out of this BS, go Bucks, close quote. I was a journalism major at OU in the early 1980s and spent many Saturdays in the press box at what was then Owens Field, now Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium. I wrote for the school newspaper, was sports anchor and news producer for live cable access broadcast, and served as news director at our NPR radio station. I am a firm believer in a free press. That freedom of expression and the right to knowledge is being dismantled under the mantra of fake news. The instilling of distrust in the news media is real and dangerous. True, one should not believe everything they see, hear, or read at face value. But the idea that there is nothing of substance coming from legitimate news sources leads to a blind faith in the loudest mouth. Recently, I heard a sports journalist state, we should keep politics out of sports. Notre Dame in the 1930s forfeited a game against OU because blacks were not allowed in Norman, Oklahoma, let alone the stadium at that time. Notre Dame had a black player. There has never been a time politics weren't involved in sports. The conundrum is, whose politics? Football is followed by rich and poor, blacks, whites, essentially all ethnicities. Many teams are based in cities with consistent issues of racial injustice. Many players are from these communities. The NFL is currently 70% black. The NBA is 74% black. The MLB is 8.5% black and 29.8% Latino. MLS is 10% black and 25% Latino. There are 32 black players in the NHL. There are currently no black majority team owners in the NFL, MLB, or the NHL. All of these numbers are political. Russ, a white kid whom I met in 3rd grade on a basketball court, and would become my brother for 33 years until his tragic death, loved the Boston Celtics of the Larry Bird era. I was decidedly a committed fan of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Magic Johnson's Lakers and Dr. J and his Sixers. We both understood that our lines were drawn based upon styles of play, which in effect was just coded language for race. Fundamentals versus flashy and fast. We'd chide one another if your team lost, bask in moments of victory, then laugh, drink Dr. Pepper, and go play football. Once on the field near the Armory, we'd become our favorite OU or Dallas Cowboy players of the 70s, and that porous line between us disintegrated. We played every Sunday afternoon for years. It was a kind of ritual. Often, if only in my imagination, I returned to that patchy, hard dirt of Roosevelt Elementary to revisit the huddle, the cipher of possibility, the circle of respect, inclusiveness, and togetherness. All of us must huddle up, or we will all lose the game.